As is true for many of us, our parents help shape our lives. My father, he believed in grabbing each moment and living each day to its fullest, regardless of the obstacles, to make the best out of every situation. And my mother, she was a pioneer, brave, courageous, selfless, had a huge love for all living things. And it was this courage that she had that helped her push through the darkness and find what was light. It is these examples that I find really shape who I am and helped me understand that having compassion and joy and trust and listening to that voice deep inside, that one can achieve anything. And it is my life's journey that has brought that forward in honor of them and what they've taught me, and how watching them and following their example in life, I've been able to really find that compassion and joy and trust to that silent voice.
Greetings and a warm welcome to Peace Squared. Journey with Dr. Guldal Caba as she visits spiritual spaces and renowned healers around the world to learn more about how we can heal and emerge into our fullest potential, heart, body, mind, and soul. Dr. Guldal, host of the #1 podcast radio show Are You Awake and TV personality, is herself a highly regarded and qualified psychologist and naturopath, as well as being a medicine woman and a spiritual leader of an independent branch of the Native American Church. Who better to help you understand your path to your highest good and introduce you to a wide range of healing modalities than this amazing being who has successfully guided thousands on the quest for inner peace and joyous well-being. Now, let's meet Dr. Guldal. Welcome, Dr. Guldal.
Thank you for having me and doing this show. It's just such an honor, by the way. I just want to make sure I say that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Now, let's start at the very beginning. You know, it's been said there are no mistakes, that there's always a reason for everything, and this concept extends to the place we are born, our gender, our nationality, our ethnicity. And you were born in Turkey, Izmir to be exact, 90 minutes from the place where it is said Mother Mary lived her last days. Please talk about the significance of your early years and how this has influenced your journey.
I was born on my grandmother's couch, 90 minutes away from where Mary lived her last days. And my mother wanted a natural birth from what I understand, and according to the little neighborhood at the time, it was quite that. I like to have an entrance, I think. I didn't know about Mary's place until I was maybe 13, 14 in there. And a cousin of mine took me for the first time. And there's the city of Ephesus, which is very famous for holding the ruins of an entire city of the Roman era, the Amazonians, the Hellenic period, on and on and on. And it's a huge tourist attraction, but it's, miles and miles and miles of the entire city. Mary's home is on a mountain behind that. She was first taken there, but it was too much of a metropolis, too many people coming, and she had to be protected, obviously. So the mountain behind that is an Armenian village, and a mountain right behind that is where her home is. So driving up the mountain, all of a sudden something just changes, the energy changes. The first time I saw it, obviously it didn't look like it does now. It's just a square stone home with running water, and it was being taken care of by Dutch nuns, a silent order of Dutch nuns that had their convent right behind it, and they ran the place purely on donation from around the world. And they would bead rosaries with the rosewood trees that were there.
Wow.
And they would make the candles. And it was just stunning. And there was an altar with Mary there, but there was a saying outside that was in the Quran about Mary, Jesus, Buddha, Moses, that everybody was a part of God and that all needed to enter and share this space. And the water was very holy, sort of bottled up, and you can set prayers and set your intentions. But just halfway up to that mountain, for me what happened was something just changed. There was a lightness, a pureness of heart. And at the time you could light the candles inside, and there was these hand-rolled candles, and there was this tin with sand in it, and you would light it and set your intention right in front of this beauty of Mary, but in the space that she lived. And just knowing that consciously changes the entire body,
Of course.
And I remember setting the intention for 3 things. And I couldn't leave. I didn't want to leave that space. So finally they dragged me out, we have to go. Within a week, everything I'd intended happened. And we started talking to people in that area, people that grew up close to that. And everyone would say, well, if you need something, you go there and pray. It always happens within 24 hours. But remember to say what you're going to give back if you get what you ask for. It's not always taking.
Right.
It's a giving back. So many people would say, well, I'll feed a family that are poor. I'll do, something about if you give me this, I'll give back. And I came to find out years later that that's a very old indigenous spiritual tradition, that if you ask for something, the importance of making an offering to give back. So, and I think, churches do that in the form of tithing.
Absolutely.
But there's many ways to do that. That was my first introduction. And from that moment forward, I just always had to go. Do you just know there's something different? How do you explain it?
This emerging into the fullness of your healing gifts seems to be an ongoing journey. And this journey has taken you all over the world, from Western medicine to Eastern healing, from the indigenous to the modern. So please tell me about this journey, perhaps beginning with the Western side as a licensed psychologist, holder of multiple degrees, or whichever one you feel drawn to begin speaking about.
It's so much easier for me to talk about someone else than myself. So let me just say, this is a little bit finding myself feeling a little shy. So I'm going to put that out there because it's important.
Yes.
It's important because it's always been about the work and not about me, but yet I'm the vessel that's had to carry it forward.
Right.
That's true for all of us. We're all that. We all have to touch that place inside of us where we're the vessel to our own divinity, our own wisdom inside,
right.
and whatever we're supposed to do with that while we're here. Parenting, our job, it doesn't matter what those things are almost.
Yeah.
They're expressed. It expresses our soul journey.
Yes.
But ultimately we're here for the soul journey.
Yes.
So when you ask me that, I have to kind of step back and think, okay, what does that really mean? What it means to me, how I hear that, is that I can't do it separately.
Yes.
That they're not separate. That ever since I was a little girl, I saw bridges.
Right.
And I would get excited. It didn't matter if it was just like a little hook bridge or a big bridge, I would get excited. And I came to understand later in a sweat lodge when I was doing my adoption ceremony that that's because my job as the vessel was to bridge things.
Right.
And that didn't come until much later.
Right.
But there are bridges everywhere. The name of my church is Bridging Healing Disciplines. It's always about that. So as a little girl, being intuitive and seeing and feeling people's pain, I didn't know what I was seeing, but things would be dark or they'd be light inside, or I'd see moments of experience traumatic for most people, and it would hurt me. I can remember one time where it dropped me to my knees.
Wow.
It was just too much pain. So somewhere along the line, I just shut it down, all of it down. But it was a long time ago. We didn't have the science then we have now. So I would say things to people like, why are you being mean to that person? You don't know what's happening in their home.
Yes.
And part of that was being someone of different culture, living in different places, so never really fitting in. There are two elements happening at the same time.
Right.
Living in Turkey, living in the United States, changing different places in the United States, never being a part of any of those places. Being intuitive and a chameleon because you have to survive, and then always observing. So all of this was happening. But I was an extremely insecure child. So I couldn't claim that. It just hurt me.
Right.
So the only path I could see in front of me was to make sure no one else hurt that way.
Right.
So as much as I wanted to be a dancer and as much as I wanted to decorate pretty things, I felt my only path was to be a psychologist at a time when psychotherapy was strictly about, the subconscious and the conscious.
Right.
And in graduate school, I would get in trouble because intuitively I knew there was more. So instead of things being cause and effect, to me, I would see everything in those bridges as a circle.
Right.
And I would say those things and get in trouble. And already an insecure person, so I stopped saying those things, but kept searching.
Right.
And it was right about that time that the AIDS crisis hit. And I was drawn to help. My friend, my dearest, dearest friend, passed away. And that was his request of me, help. So I did. I didn't know what I was doing. So for 10 years, I did a support group, and it was during that time that I could see being expressed what I believed in my heart. And how people lived out their last days and how that dignity could become and what people could have, and those that could never come to acceptance and what happened to their bodies, and those that came to a deep sense of acceptance and peace. Because when the AIDS crisis first came out, there was the added element of, you know, you're gay and there's something wrong with you, and people were losing their churches and their homes and their families. And for many, our Mondays were the only thing they had, you know?
Right.
And the research bared it out then too. So nothing's an accident. And people started seeing that how we thought and felt affected our physical self. And I was walking around going, finally, there's a name for this thing. It really exists. I wasn't crazy. Because you can feel a little crazy.
Having multiple degrees in Western medicine is just one part of who you are. Just as important is the side of your life where you've spent many years training with masters in various holistic healing traditions. So please elaborate on your experience of training in the mind-body healing traditions.
You know, as we talk about with David Brownstein,
Yes.
we'll come back to that, who
Yes.
was my medical teacher. It was during that time that I helped people for 10 years that I had a physiological collapse. I was doing my PhD studies, went through a divorce, lots of early difficulties, the chronic stress that builds up and can cause an immune system breakdown. Again, the thing that I used to see always in bodies, there are no accidents.
No.
Even the worst of things that happen, and boy, I tell you, working with people for the many years that I've been working, we all suffer, we have suffering, you know. But even those worst of things can become the vehicle that takes us where we're supposed to go. And when we're in the throes of that, that's the last thing you want to hear.
Yeah.
You know, oh, well, it has purpose or it has a reason. We throw that around, but it's deeper and bigger than that. So when I had my physiological collapse, I was 1 week from dead, and I was led through a friend who did acupuncture, who sent me to a chiropractor who diagnosed the B12 deficiency, who told me about David Brownstein. You see how life happens, you know?
Yes.
So my father drove me there, bless his heart, 2 hours. I collapsed on the table. Young man he was, and I'm coming back around to your question through this, so
Yes.
bear with me for a moment. Because again, nothing is a straight road.
Exactly.
He was a young doctor who'd worked as a physician for maybe a year. I may have the timing wrong. And he felt inside of him that this is wrong. The way we're doing this, we're hurting people. I can't be a doctor and hurt people. I'm either going to quit medicine or I'm going to do it differently. So he tells convention to, you know, go away, heck with you, and opens a little office, and he's going to treat people from an integrative model when this was unheard of. That's where I land.
Right.
And he looks at me and he checks my figures. You know, my blood pressure was, I believe, something ridiculous like 70/50. My body temperature in Fahrenheit was 93 and normal is, you know, 97. I was, you know, non-functioning, and I was maybe 80, 90 pounds heavier than I am now because nothing was working. And I couldn't see. He holds my hand, he looks at me, and he says, "You're almost dead, a week away from dead, and I'm going to fix you. And tell me about your stress." Well, of course, I break down crying. Somebody finally heard me. And from that time, when I started that piece of my journey, then the awakening of the spiritual piece came back. Because I had shut that door down. I couldn't do what I was doing and be in the hospitals and help bury over 200 people and feel all their pain to the degree that I was when I was doing my own stress. So somewhere along that line, a wall had gone up. And I wasn't intuitive. I was empathic and compassionate, but I wasn't intuitive. But then I couldn't work. I couldn't go to school. I couldn't get out of bed. I would have seizures if I did. Couldn't eat. And during that time, the spirit guides, the ancestors started coming. But they also came from outside. Somebody would introduce me to somebody. I was doing healing weekends, you know, for people living with AIDS. These are intense weekends of healing. And Mackay, who's now passed, was a Native American healer. And before he passed away, he showed up at my door. And in the traditional way of being gifted to become a healer, a master will give you a healing gift. It's handed over in a way. Now, for some, it's already in us, and that comes forward. So sometimes the master will awaken that further or give you a new gift. Mackay gave me a new gift that day. He gave me the gift of working with my hands. I didn't know why he was there. But then after he left, all of a sudden I started doing healing with my hands. So during that 2 and 3 year period, as I was being medically treated for an emotionally caused immune system disorder, which broke down my physical body, my spiritual self came back. And after 2 or 3 years of that kind of healing, I was told to open an office. I'm like, okay. So I was working as a psychologist in a practice, and I opened an office and I put a table there, and I'm like, okay. And people just started calling out of the blue. That's a little bit how it happened.
Listening to the call of your soul.
Exactly.
The Native American philosophy of all our relations, which speaks so beautifully to the divine connection of all living beings, it seems to be an important part of your own philosophy, and the idea that we're all synergistically part of a whole as we journey through life and encounter cycles that come up in life. There seem to have been many people who were profoundly important in your journey and with whom you had an exchange of energy. Now, in a subsequent episode of Peace Squared, we're going to be exploring these relationships further, but for now, please share with us how these relationships have affected your life. Perhaps maybe beginning, as you had touched on him already, with the award-winning doctor and author of 11 books, Dr. Brownstein.
It's about, you said a moment ago, the call of the soul. Something that has always been the words that have vibrated through and resonated through me, that we have to follow the call of our soul. Yes, everybody is synergistically connected. We are all one. I've not reached this state, but I've had moments of touching where when you look at people and you see the divine in every face that you see, in every plant that you see, in every experience that you have. Some people know it in this kind of language and others just live it. And I would say Dr. Brownstein's one of those people. And you'll hear him speak about that, how he followed the call of his soul, and now he's a prolific author. He puts it out on the table. He doesn't listen to convention. He does his own research. He's world-renowned. You took a step, you took a risk, you followed your heart, but then you tried it out, which is what you do.
And once I saw the changes in my dad, I knew that's what I wanted to do in medicine. And I got rid of the lawyer, told the partners I was leaving the practice, and they asked me, what are you going to do? And I said, I'm going to go do holistic medicine. And they said, how are you going to do that? And I said, I don't know. And I left, and here we are 20 plus years later.
So you didn't even know you were having a call in your heart, except that you were restless and you couldn't sleep and you were uncomfortable, and then it just blurted out.
Absolutely, that's what happened.
How would you define that? I know how I would define it. How would you define it? What that is?
I think that I probably wasn't hearing the message before, and that it had to become louder to me, and that was the shouting that came to me and how I reacted to that.
That's great. Where do you think the message comes from for you?
Where do I think it comes from? I think it comes from deep inside, and I think it's it's what resonates with you and what doesn't resonate with you. And what I was clearly doing in conventional medicine was not resonating with me. I could see the effects on people and know that I was taught to do it this way, but it doesn't make it the right way, and people were not getting better, and it was the wrong way, and I could not follow down that path.
And that was my teacher. How blessed can a person be? Didn't know it at the time. I just wanted someone to help me feel better. Sometimes it's really all we need. We need somebody to look us in the eye and just get it. Yeah. It's about bearing witness, sitting witness, and it's written in every single form of religion or spirituality from the beginning of time.
Yes.
Or it's drawn in pictures if there was no speaking yet. That just being one with another is incredibly healing if the other receives that witnessing. We have to receive it. We can block it. We can sit there and love and do everything. All kinds of healing has to be received. All kinds of love has to be received. The thing that I would ask anybody, and I do now consciously, is to look in to see if you're willing to receive. And many will say yes, even though they're not, because it's out of awareness.
There are many parallels between you and the world-famous medium and author Paul Selig. What is the significance of that connection in your life?
It's interesting. I was introduced to Paul, like many people, and he's become a dear friend, and I'm grateful for that. When I was first introduced to his book, I Am Word, I opened it up and I started reading. And Paul is a direct channel. The way I channel, the way the divine speaks through me is very different the way it does with him. He opens his mouth, they do the work, he gets to just record it, and then it's a book, which, you know, I always tell him I'm a little jealous. I think he has the easy way. It's not easy, believe me, he works hard. But when I first opened I Am Word and I started reading, I had this huge experience because I had always been very isolated in my work. I have my friend, Dr. Davis, who we helped develop Interpathic Process. But other than him, you know, it was a little health consulting practice in the door, and it was only word of mouth, and people would come. It was only after they'd been with me for a while that the other pieces would start coming, and they'd say, wow, how do you know that? And I'd say, well, you know, I'm slightly intuitive. And I would just like walk in because that was the era. And it wasn't safe. It never felt safe.
Right.
And so then, you know, apparently I'd lived in that bubble maybe a little too long because then there was this bestseller book, and I opened the book, and there were passages that the guides had spoken through him that were direct quotes of the way my spirit guides had taught me.
The way my guides work is they're teachers, and they come through with energy, and they say, you know, I'm a radio, we're all radios, they say, we're always in broadcast, and they just, in some wonderful way, come through. I mean, when I do the books, I close my eyes, I sit in a chair, and they deliver the entire book, you know, chapter at a time usually, or half a chapter at a time, until it's done. The books don't require any editing.
When I started doing the work, in a similar way, I was intuitive as a child and blocked it because it was too painful.
Yeah.
My experience was that I became very ill.
Uh-huh.
And my awakening had to be I had to come back home.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't going to get well unless I did.
Yeah.
So many of the messages that the guides give you were messages that I was given to start doing the work, to start being a healer, to not hide about it, be this healer. But I was always told that I had to write a book. Well, I'm ADD. I didn't want to write the book.
Yeah.
And when I read that you just sat down and recorded it, I had a little jealousy moment with the guides. Why did you do that for me? I'm laughing about it because it's so beautiful that it happens that way. But what came through my spirit guides and what came through the divine, it was verbatim. And it was earth-shattering for me in a lot of ways. Number one, it was great to break through any other ego that I may have left, that I, you know, that was my work. Because, okay, we're all human. A part of me was walking around going, that's mine, it's coming through me. But it's beautifully humbling.
Right.
But at the same time, what really came through is the truth is the truth is the truth. The absolute divine truth of who we are, why we're here, the frequency of love, the frequency of light, source, God, call it what you will, whatever you're comfortable with, the universe. Everyone has their own comfort word. Doesn't matter. You know, Gandhi talks about all religions are just different paths to the same place. That's what that moment was for me. They were exactly the same words. So then I'm sitting there, well, were my guides his guides? And I would get the answer yes and no. But it's the word that is important. And if you look at those words, and if you look at the words that have come through me or anybody else that does the work of the light, you'll see those words in every religious text in one form or another.
Absolutely.
Just pure.
I love that your guides, the answer was yes and no.
Correct.
That's deliciously ambiguous.
Welcome to my world. It's always like that.
Oh, wow.
And then interpretation is the issue because the ego mind can do a lot of interpretation. So, you know, that's what we're going to try to do here. We're going to try to put it out there.
Right.
And allow people to touch their own resonance, allow their own soul to tell them what they resonate with and what feels true to them, you know?
So are you awake?
Yeah.
Tell me about this experience as well as being a TV personality, your experience in the media bringing this incredible
Do our viewers
energy.
know that I have no idea what questions you were going to ask me ahead of time?
Would you? Well, you've just said it.
Right. That's a tough one. So when Are You Awake was on Energy Talk Radio, it was the #1 radio show. I've only recently reintroduced it. It's the divine working through me. It's taking elements of my academic scholarly work as a naturopath and as a psychologist of specializing in body-mind medicine in my studies of indigenous healing, East and West, ancient and new. It takes that as a context, but each podcast is a channeled experience. And at the end of each podcast, there's an exercise for meditation and healing and self-hypnosis and energy. Because the goal isn't for me to be everybody's healer or anybody's healer ultimately, but to teach each person to do for themselves. You know, there's a story in one of Osho's books where he recounts the story of Rabia, who was a Muslim mystic, who speaks that the only true teacher is one that shows the path and gets out of the way.
I love that.
And I'm hoping that's what we're doing here.
So there are many new age and self-help books and broadcasts available now. There's Oprah's Super Soul Sunday, Hay House Radio, Abraham Hicks. What is your feeling on this widespread availability of information? And is there a way in which we can be sure we are listening to the truth?
The very core that moves me more than anything in the world, that can just bring me to tears in a heartbeat, is the foundation of the work that I do. And that is, we learn and we understand what highest good is, and we learn how to listen for highest good within. Because when we have that, we have everything.
Right.
You know, Patanjali talks about with intuition comes the knowing of all things. That we can know it all, and we have to do that within what's highest good. So to answer your question, I would answer it from there first, that when we check in with ourselves with what's best for me, if highest good is too lofty a word, some people are uncomfortable. If what's in my best interest, what's best for my growth, what's best for who I am as and this person, what's best for my family, because highest good is all of that. If I ask that question and learn how to listen to that voice, then we always know the answer. And
That's
there could
true.
be all the flights of fancy out there wants to be. That's our responsibility, not theirs.
So true.
So let everyone speak. And on that note, as I said earlier, you know, I lived in this isolated bubble. I was either that weirdo, new agey weirdo person, which whatever that meant to people, wasn't me. I was an academic. But at the same time, there's all this woo-woo stuff, you know? And it was a lonely place. Because you could sound crazy. You know, your grandmother's in the room and she's telling me blah, 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 like the light's flickering. Well, it's not really the light flickering, it's a message. Sometimes that would be the way it would be. I'm not a psychic. But sometimes messages come in the way they come. So, you know, especially when you're a child that was bullied like I was, and a child that was never understood because, you know, most people understand what it feels like to not really belong. Even if we totally belong as adolescents, we always feel like we don't belong.
Yeah.
So in our soul, we all have that feeling of not really belonging somewhere, and it's a real need. So until I was able to fully heal that, then I became even more isolated, and the world wasn't ready. So you asked me what I think about it. I'm excited. I think it's wonderful. And more people are being gifted. More and more people are connecting to the gifts that they have. And the youth, I'm so excited for them, because their vibration's higher, faster, and we live in this accelerated Look, this is global.
This is global.
I'm
This
gonna-
is global.
This is global.
And
There's a
therefore,
little
this is
office in
global.
New York, a little office in Ohio. I'd go to Turkey and I'd do a little work. Even that was a lot.
Yeah.
But now right here, we're speaking, the entire world is connecting with us at the same time. It's unbelievable. So no, it's exciting.
Wonderful. And I love the sense of responsibility, of the responsibility inherent in checking in with yourself to see what is in my highest good, what feels good to me, which in a way is taking responsibility for yourself and not projecting it onto anything else, and therefore seeing something distorted in a way. Checking in with yourself to see, does this feel good? Does this feel good? And then knowing, right, okay, then this is a direction I can move in.
It is so empowering. We've given away our power. This is about claiming our power, not only just claiming it back, but claiming it at its inherent source
Right,
of the depth of what I can be. It's riding a frequency like no other,
right.
and it's within all of us.
So as we have been talking about empowerment, in a subsequent episode of Peace Squared, you journey to South Africa. In light of what we've spoken of, the sense of empowerment and bringing up the concept of imprints that we may be carrying from ancestors, our environment, please touch on that incredible experience in South Africa.
First time I went to South Africa, I landed there and I looked around, I just felt it. I just felt the pain and the agony. What I really felt was the resilience and the beauty. And you can just feel. You could feel the big five, you know, you could feel the kudu, you could feel the drums. And the people trying to make it happen, make it work. This time, Oh, actually, I want to backtrack. My first initiation into becoming a healer myself happened my first trip in South Africa. And it wasn't until this trip to South Africa that I realized that. But I went there just as I was about in the middle of my own healing journey with Dr. Brownstein and the spirit guides. And it was right after apartheid was over, so it was still really raw, and the townships were still a mess. And I went to the township of Mamelodi, and everybody came out, and they were like, welcome home.
Wow.
And I spent a day with a Sangoma, which is a South African medicine person.
Right.
I don't remember it as a day. Felt like 20 minutes, it was hours, or maybe it was hours and felt like 20 minutes. I can't even tell you. But she burned this in Pepu. It's like a sage, a South African sage. And she did whatever it is she did, but I realize now that she was initiating me as a healer. So this time to South Africa, years later, we're in a much better place. Constitution Hill has been built. But what South Africa represents is everything, you know, in a microcosm of what the world is meant to be, I feel. And what I want to do is to bring those elements of beauty. Gandhi started there.
Yes.
Mandela followed Gandhi's footsteps and created what he created, a single man who followed the call of his soul. This is all about following the call of your soul.
Right.
You know? And that to walk into Constitution Hill, to where Mandela signed the paperwork for freedom in the very place where he was a prisoner, what's there to even say? You just stand there and you feel that.
Yeah.
So when we went to Soweto, not Mamelodi this time, to be with the Sangoma and her family, and we went there to have the experience of being with the Sangoma, to bring that forward in Peace Squared, and what ended up happening was the finish of what started in Mamelodi. She adopted me, and now I get to claim Sangoma, medicine woman as well. And I'm the family of Gogomata now, because we were able to see the connection that all healers are the same.
Hello. Tiki bro. That this is mine for spiritual power, and the ancestors know. So this has now been energized in prayer, in ritual. So the frequency of her prayer is put inside of this fabric. And now when I take this fabric home, Gogomata says I put under my pillow when I'm sleeping, because I travel so much, to keep the dark spirits away, to keep me safe. She is forever with me to keep me safe. So when you energize something in this kind of ritual, it is forever in that vibration, and I will hold it.
So in the Native American tradition,
I'm glad you brought that up.
we talk
Yes.
about all our relations
Right,
and the
yes.
ancestors. Well, in South Africa, the medicine people speak to the ancestors. They don't speak to spirit guides. So if you see how we talked about earlier, the truth is the truth is the truth,
Yes.
because it comes down, the downloads are from the same place.
Yes.
Our ancestors, our spirit guides, the divine, ascended masters, and who knows what else, angels. We don't even touch what that really means. But it's the same thing.
Yes.
So I'm working with my Native American family, who are all relation, who speak to everything on this planet, on Mother Earth, as relation to us, and we must treat it with that honor. There are still these threads of truth that run through. And South Africa is such a beautiful microcosm of all of that, of the violence and the hatred and the separatism and genocide and love and peace and beauty. And still through the ancestors, healing can come. And what do they do? They do the same thing a naturopath does, an indigenous healer does, an integrative medicine person does, and that is looks to the body, looks to what the emotion is carrying, looks to the gut, tries to heal all those components in a spiritual way. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely, and more. excellent that you've gone in that direction, because this leads us to the next question, which is how can we better create a healthier emotional environment for ourselves, especially in the context of our physical bodies and how our bodies are responding to energetic and emotional conditions, ancestral imprints, subconscious issues we may not even be aware of. So what are the steps we can take to create a healthier emotional environment for the whole of who
It's
we
really
are?
overwhelming when I hear it, because I say that stuff all the time, and people say to me, wow, that's really overwhelming. It really is.
It is.
It
can
really is
be.
overwhelming, because it's so much.
It is.
And we don't actually have to attend to each one of those things. We have to trust that the whole picture is a part of who we are.
Right.
You know, if we're one element of the whole picture, but without us, the picture wouldn't be the same,
Yes.
then that's enough. But to answer your question, an emotional environment is necessary. A good emotional environment is necessary for good health, and good health is necessary for a good emotional body. The first thing we ever want is to have health. If we're going to evolve, change, transform, and heal anything in our lives, we have to have the energy for it.
Yes.
We have to feel good enough to devote time there. Otherwise, it takes everything we have. And decay is part of life.
Yeah.
So yes, we get hit by our environment, we get hit emotionally. But in order to do what you say, it almost doesn't matter which door you come in. So you asked the question, how can I create an emotional environment to manage, you know, my genetic piece, whether it's karma, imprints, physiological imprints, genetic physiology, emotional patterns, our gut, and how we respond, and what's going on in the environment. Pick a door, because it's the circle of life. So it doesn't matter. So depending on where you are, each person is in that moment. If it's a stomach ache, which is a big deal, we all have stomach issues because 70% of our immune system is in our gut. Some say maybe 90. And dopamine, serotonin, all the mood chemicals, neurochemicals actually live in the gut as well. Interesting, right?
That is very interesting.
So all the old words like, oh, I can't digest that, I couldn't swallow that, they mean more than
Right.
that. They're all based in truth. Again, if we look backwards, we have experiences. When the human body, human mind has experiences, it wires. There's a neurochemical thing that happens. We, you know, touch something hot, we remember that that thing is hot. We remember before we see it, we can actually remember the pain. There's a wiring that occurs. So when you grow up in apartheid, the wiring becomes everybody's different. I'm allowed to speak to these people. I'm not allowed to cross this line. They're not allowed to cross this line. That becomes wired into the body. And if we're not careful, if we're not aware of that point, you seem to be aware of it. So if we're not aware of that point, if we're not aware that that's wired into my body, that no matter what, that's going to come first, then that will always drive the buses, if you will. But when we become aware of it in the way that we can be conscious, then we can feel that pull, because it's almost like a physical pull. It's sometimes, wouldn't you say, like in a moment? If we feel that pull and we become aware of what that is, then we can choose what we want to do with it, yeah?
Sure.
So it's the key, I believe, to human evolution is that awakening, is that moment. We can't change that wiring from when it happened. We can certainly create a brand new pathway. We can certainly have a detour. And when that happens, I can be awake enough to know, hey, I know what that is, and I choose. It's going to take us forward.
Right.
Always. So to create then, from that statement, a good emotional place, the first thing we have to do is get to know who we are. I can't tell you what's a good emotional place for you. I mean, if you opened yourself up and gave me permission, I can ask my guides in the intuitive process to look, but you have to know yourself, each person. So first thing we have to do is get to know ourselves. For me, if I can walk in nature, whether it's trees or water, and I can be completely silent, that's all I need. It changes the world for me. And it's harder with all of the technology. Like I find, I know it's hard to believe, but I can get really cranky. I can get really cranky, and especially if the phone keeps going off.
Right.
But I do an outward expression of that. I can guarantee you everybody's getting cranky with all that. So some time to self, whatever that means, whether it's being one with television, a book at the bathtub, whatever it is for each person, first we have to know who we are. And once we know who we are, we have to honor that what we need is worthy. Because we all know what to do. You can pick up any magazine, you can watch any television show, you can Google anything. We all have the data.
Right.
It's not like we're lacking information by any means. What we're lacking is who we are, what we need, and to honor that enough as worthy. That's the trick. And it's harder than we think.
And I think that's worth repeating, actually. Who we are,
what we need, and honoring
the
that.
courage to honor that.
Honor that is worthy.
To honor that that is worthy.
Right. So if we honor all of our relations equally, and if everything's equally the same, then we have to, by definition, be equally worthy.
Absolutely.
And human beings are yet learning that.
Trinidad and Tobago, this twin island republic, one of the most multi-ethnic, multi-religious spaces in the world. Now, as an Intuit, you would be very sensitive to the vibration of a space. What does the vibration of Trinidad and Tobago feel like to you, and what value is this kind of vibration?
But what I found when we shot the show here was the privilege of going to the Hanuman temple with the giant Hanuman and La Divina Pastora, where the Black Madonna once a week moves from her home as a Catholic Madonna and moves into this alcove, and she gets to be worshipped as Kali by the Hindu population here. That touches my soul like nothing I've ever experienced before. The reverence and the honoring, right? We are all relations. The honoring that we all have our own path to get to the light, the own path that our internal devotion wants to connect to, and to make that just okay. And the way that the lights, you know, when you light a candle to Mary, which is so special to me, yet it's in a clay pot.
The dia.
But that is so beautiful to me.
Yes.
And then we got to go to the monastery and meet with the abbot there. And they're a Benedictine order. And they're about benevolence and silence. And
Mount St. Benedict.
yes, Mount St.
Lovely,
Benedict.
lovely.
And I study with a Hindu guru. I'm a Native American minister. I'm a spiritual leader in the Native American church. I was raised in Turkey. I connect to Mary. You can see how within me these places are very vast. Not everyone is like that.
Right.
But yet here in Trinidad, spaces are like that.
Yes.
It's beautiful. So Father John, sitting there speaking with him, was speaking about being contemplative and quiet and listening to the whisper in your heart. And as he was speaking, all the truths lined up again, you know, which is the way I like to look at the world. Where are the connections and where are they the same? Oh, look, here it is, there it is, there it is. And I remember saying to him, you sound like the Dalai Lama, you sound like a Buddhist. You know, I said, you sound like a Buddhist, and he just got so excited. It's like, I know, but when you go deep enough and you connect enough, you see that the whispers are the same. Of course, I teared up. And
Oh, that's beautiful.
beautiful. And so the experience in Trinidad for me, and then I got to go eat doubles
Oh, well,
right after that. I mean,
that's the supreme.
It was the supreme. It was so much. I couldn't get enough.
It doesn't
I
get any
messed
better
them all
than
over
that.
myself. I didn't care. It was just gooey, wonderful, delicious. But that's the joy of life, right?
Yes, it
To
is.
just savor it all.
So let's talk about Peace Squared. What is your vision for the journey of this television series? What are your hopes? How do you envision the series unfolding?
I can have a vision, and we can trust it'll be something like that because the divine has its own mind. You know? So what I see as the foundation of what Peace Squared is meant to be is to bring us all around the world to see what the ancient wisdom of that part of the world has to offer, connect the dots, and yet see how it's uniquely about that land and the food and the culture and the music and the herbs that are used for healing. And at the same time, look where that place may be currently, and bring that forward in Peace Squared to show that we are all relation. You know, we are all unified, and if we listen to the call of the soul, if we learn how to listen to ourselves, then we can have everything we ever wanted.
You're so busy feeding everyone else's souls, so to speak, or teaching people how to feed their own souls. What feeds your soul?
Quiet time in nature. Just being in the same room with somebody I love, family, friends, an animal.
Ah, yes.
in quiet. I really love quiet. Going to special places of resonance, India, Turkey, Mary's home. Those are bigger things. But on the daily basis, some yoga. Just need some quiet so I can listen, so I can clear out, because I'm with people all day long and I collect so much. As much as I create a space of protection, I need the time to clean it out. We all do, actually.
Absolutely.
You know, there's an old YouTube thing that I did years ago called the body sponge phenomenon, how we're all a sponge for everybody's stuff and how to clean that out. So I try to practice that. I do my best to walk the talk, you know, but really just quiet. Listening, chanting, so important to me, to make the
Right.
sounds, to make the right sounds. So that changes the vibration of me, of my space, opens me up so I can hear and see better,
Right.
and also separate what's mine. It's easy to get lost if something is similar,
Right.
you know.
Yes.
So that'll show me if something's yet unfinished for me, because I don't ask anyone to do what I'm not willing to do. And at the foundation of it, it's about discovering highest good, learning to listen to the call of your soul, awakening and increasing consciousness, because when we declutter, the light comes in. You know, it's not like that drawer, right? Everybody has that drawer. It's just stuffed with stuff. You don't even know what's in there anymore. You just know stuff lives there.
Yes.
And you keep adding more stuff.
Yes.
Amazing how much more can take, right? You shove down and add. And you pull that drawer out and you dump it. You clean it out in there and you put back only those elements that you want and need. The configuration is completely different. The vibration is different.
Yes.
There's room. And because there's room, anything can grow. There will be serious moments. You know, we're having a serious conversation. At the same time, there's so much joy and uplifting in that.
Yes.
It's a lot of fun. I mean, you have to have fun.
Absolutely.
We don't have enough fun. We're all in this together. Let's just have
Absolutely.
fun doing it. Let's all raise ourselves together. Let's follow each other. You know, I love Steph's theme song for this show. Come follow me, come follow me.
I understand it's quite special.
I'm so excited that Steph Kalu agreed to do this song for us. It's upbeat, it's playful, it's so Caribbean, but most importantly, that's what Peace2's about. It's what I'm about. The whole life is about. Come follow me isn't just me. Come follow the guidance, come follow the call of our soul.
Right.
And let's take it up. Let's get out from down here. Let's get away from that lower vibration and let's just go. Let's take it up and higher and higher. It's what Peace2's about. It's what the song's about. It just makes me so happy. You know those accidents that are not accidents,
Yes.
synchronistic moments? That was one of them.
Dr. Guldal, thank you so very much for your precious time and for so generously sharing your life-changing wisdom and guidance. I can hardly wait to see the future episodes. Viewers, thank you so much for joining us on this, the maiden voyage of the pilot episode of Peace2. Here's to the joyous uniting of heart, body, mind, and soul as Peace2 leaves the harbor. Join us for future episodes and the exciting journey of a lifetime. From Trinidad and Tobago, I am Patty Ann Ali. Positive vibrations and welcome aboard.